Saying you attend Harvard these days is about the equivalent to saying you attend Twitter University. And I've noticed that ever since people started making videos where they interview students at these incredibly prestigious universities like Harvard, the general populace have really started to catch on to just how stupid and radicalized a lot of these supposed intellectuals actually are. And today I'm going to be showing you exactly what I mean. Recently, this YouTuber named SHIRLEY went to Harvard to interview some of the students and ask them some political questions, and let's just say our brightest pupils are looking quite dim.
And also here in the United States, we received over 8 million, potentially up to 16 million migrants. What do you guys think about the migrant crisis that's going on here in America?
I support open borders.
You support open borders?
Oh, hell yeah.
And why do you guys support open borders?
This isn't our country. This country was founded on genocide and culture and taking it from indigenous people. Whoever the wants to come here should be able to come here. Why did we get to come here? Why did my ancestors get to come here?
Disagreeing with these people or challenging their arguments is always tricky because of the morally pure foundations of their idiotic arguments. And they always lean heavily into the fact that if you disagree with them, well, now they have the right to demonize you, because they'll make it seem like you're disagreeing with the foundation of their arguments rather than what they've built upon it. They build dangerous ideas upon a morally pure foundation, and if you disagree with anything, they circle it back to the root moral. Like saying you hate a building doesn't mean you're saying you hate the ground, dirt, and foundation of which the building was built upon. You're just saying you dislike what was built upon it. And what these people like to do is sprinkle true statements in with bullshit, and it sounds just true enough to get people who don't know anything to buy into what they're saying. This is how people manipulate and radicalize you. They prey on your ignorance. They can't just bang you in the head with their most radical beliefs, so they start with planting the seeds of lies alongside the seeds of truth. And over time, as these seeds begin to sprout, they'll all grow together in the same garden, but they'll make sure to water the seeds of lies more than the seeds of truth, until eventually they'll grow tall enough to cast a shadow over the truth, and then those seeds of truth will eventually die out, resulting in only lies. This is full radicalization.
And why do you guys support open borders?
This isn't our country. This country was founded on genocide and culture and taking it from indigenous people. Whoever the wants to come here should be able to come here.
You do realize that almost every single modern civilization around the world is built upon the skeletal fragments of the indigenous people who occupied that land before those civilizations came to be, right? This isn't something that's just exclusive to America. Genocide, and all these other things have been commonplace throughout the entirety of human history. This didn't just start with colonialism, capitalism, or any of your other buzzwords. And so what exactly is your suggestion? Like, do we all just leave America then? And go where exactly? Another civilization that was built upon genocide? And once we leave America, what happens then? Should all of the cities just be left completely unoccupied and up for Mother Nature to take its course and devour them, while all of the previous citizens of the country overflow into other countries which were built upon similar foundations? And all the businesses and massive industries that are located in America, should they all just shut down since they were all built on stolen land? Can you even conceptualize the horribly negative impact that would have on the rest of the world? Your solution sounds like the plot to a horror movie. And you support open borders. Cool. But like, what's your plan though? Like, I get you want to virtue signal and sound all morally righteous and all, but what's your plan? As things here cost more and people are making less and less, and as jobs become more and more scarce due to the massive influx of people coming in and AI replacing what will soon be millions of jobs, what is your solution? I mean, what are we going to do with all of these people? You're not suggesting anything practical. You're just suggesting what sounds good. And how about the Native American tribes that massacred other tribes over land, resources, and other reasons? If we give this land back to Native Americans, do those tribes then give back the land they acquired through massacring other tribes? Or would you not hold them to the same standard? How about the many tribes that were completely wiped out by other tribes? How do you give an extinct tribe their land back? What's your solution into this dilemma? Or have you not thought that far ahead yet? I mean, surely you wouldn't suggest we just throw some money at them, right? I mean, you can't give back the lives that have been decimated throughout this country's course of history. So what is your practical solution to what you're complaining about? Or are you just complaining for the sake of complaining? See, this is what happens when your entire diet consists of just shrooms and ashwagandha. Like, she's just saying things. There's no substance to anything she's saying. She hasn't thought any of this through. She's just saying whatever sounds right, whatever sounds like just the most morally righteous thing to say. She's just virtue signaling. That's all these people do. They're just substanceless virtue signalers.
Why did my ancestors get to come here? They were actually fleeing oppression of the UK. So it's just like the cycle repeats itself until it doesn't.
The cycle repeats itself until it doesn't. Oh, this was not the deep and profound statement you thought it was, Sweet Pea. This was not the mic drop you thought it was. So, by your own logic, since the cycle repeats itself until it doesn't, then wouldn't the answer be to stop outsiders from escaping oppression and settling into new places? I mean, you said the cycle repeats itself until it doesn't. So if escaping oppression leads to people arriving at a new place, which leads to bad things happening, then if you broke that cycle and you didn't let them come in, then the cycle wouldn't repeat itself. So by your own logic, we shouldn't let people in because historically this has resulted in the same cycle you're complaining about right now. You just proved your own point wrong.
And how many cops have been brutally hitting students, young children? Like videos of children looking out the window, watching their friends get beat by adult grown men. What the f?
Y'all realize when she says young children, she's referring to college students, right? These aren't young children. They're young adults at the least. This is emotional manipulation. She's using deceptive language to exaggerate the situation because painting the authentic picture just wouldn't get you enraged enough. So she needs to paint the image that these grown man police officers stormed onto the campuses and brutally beat down a bunch of young children for no reason at all.
What do you guys think will be the solution to all this?
A spiritual revolution where people truly understand that we're all connected and that they are connected to their own bodies, because you wouldn't be able to violate the body of another person if you were connected to your own humanity and your own body. And so it's like a psychological heart spiritual revolution where we have to unprogram the psychology that we prioritize profit over humanity, over connection. And in this capitalist culture where profit is the main priority, we're not going to be able to achieve that.
A spiritual revolution is her solution. So, let's just all sit in a big field and do shrooms together, I guess. Yeah, that'll solve all of this. She said if people truly understood that they were all connected to their own bodies, then they wouldn't be able to violate the body of another human. She says this is a psychological heart. See, the thing about this is, this only exists within the ideal society in her head. To assume we'd all have the same psychological heart is to assume that we all have some sort of uniform moral conscience which is shared across all individuals. This is an idealistic notion of society and not at all a proper reflection of reality. You're assuming that empathy arises naturally from self-awareness, but you're completely failing to account for other psychological factors such as aggression, mental illnesses, skewed moral compasses, etc. People can still violate others despite being in tune with themselves and their bodies. I mean, there's a myriad of psychological, social, and situational influences that determine these things. It's not as simple as she's making it out to be. Understanding yourself isn't a sufficient enough safeguard against harmful actions towards others. This is unrealistic and overly simplistic. We don't all share the same moral compass.
America's primarily a Christian country. Do you think more people need to start believing in Jesus and following his teachings?
Jesus is also a patriarchal story that has been co-opted by mainstream religion.
A ton of white people.
Yeah.
His literal name was Yeshua. That's not even his name, you know?
It's not about...
So she said the story of Jesus Christ is a patriarchal story. I don't think these people realize that their perceptions of things isn't just law. Their opinions aren't just fact. The story of Jesus Christ can be interpreted in so many ways. And to make this statement as if it's some objective truth that the story of Jesus Christ is patriarchal is treating your own opinion and individual interpretation of the story as fact, when really it's just your own interpretation of it. I mean, there are feminist interpretations of the Bible, liberationist interpretations of the Bible, all sorts of different interpretations. That's just the way you interpreted it. I think you could even argue that the story of Jesus Christ in some ways subverted patriarchal structures. Jesus openly spoke with women in public settings, and he did this in a society where women were marginalized and when their voices were silenced. He engaged with them as equals, and his teachings emphasized equal worth regardless of one's sex. Now, I won't say she's wrong that it has been co-opted by mainstream religion and that Europeans did whiteify the religion. But that should be a critique on the people who did that rather than the religion itself. It was once again that human interpretation / manipulation factor that contributed to that issue and not a flaw within the religion itself.
There's no savior.
Because in hierarchy and in the current political system, everyone will be corrupted by money.
Money is the root of all evil.
It's not money, it's capitalism. Money is just a tool. Capitalism is a psychology and a consciousness.
Okay, so once again, we are oversimplifying things in order to demonize things we don't like. A lot of propagandists tend to do this because they actually have a very shallow understanding of the things they critique so hard. And they also don't have strong enough arguments for the things they're rooting for. Saying capitalism is the root of all evil is a gross oversimplification and does not at all engage in the actual complexity of the issue. Now, is capitalism associated with many societal and economic problems? Yes, but it's not at all accurate to attribute all evil to capitalism. Corruption, death, inequality, and exploitation can exist in any system and has existed long before capitalism even existed. Where is the balance in this perspective? Where is the nuance? It's just, oh, capitalism equals evil. Like, oh, so we're just not going to acknowledge any of the pros of capitalism, just capitalism evil. This is a very one-dimensional way to view things.
Would we be better underneath socialism?
Socialism is a political system. Communism is a political system. Capitalism is an economic system. So people get very confused when you talk about dismantling capitalism. That has nothing to do with communism. It has nothing to do with socialism. This is political versus economic systems.
Yeah, so this is a very surface level and obtuse way of viewing communism, socialism, and capitalism. To say that capitalism has nothing to do with communism is just incorrect. I mean, that's just not a valid statement. It isn't as simple as just political versus economic systems, because each system has implications on one another. Economic systems have significant political implications, and political systems have significant economic implications. If you fail to recognize the relationships and implications these things have between one another, then you probably just shouldn't be suggesting a whole restructuring of our entire system and country, because you seem to have a very shallow understanding of how anything even works to begin with. Like, you're making really bold suggestions with practically none of the knowledge it would require to make such suggestions. You're just parroting things you've heard other people say.
Like we were just talking about this morning, this genocide couldn't happen if it wasn't for the level of true disembodiment, which is also perpetuated by the prison industrial complex, the medical industrial complex, capitalism, I mean, the whole 9 yards. People aren't in their bodies, or they wouldn't be able to pretend like this isn't happening.
She said people aren't in their bodies, or they wouldn't be able to pretend like this isn't happening in regards to what's going on in the Middle East. So for everybody out there that's focused on their own well-being or the well-beings of those around them, focusing on putting food on the table, supporting yourself and your families in the middle of this rough time, apparently you're not in your body. You're just out of your mind, and you've been brainwashed by capitalism to not protest and get out there on those front lines. The brainwashing that capitalism has inflicted upon you is the reason you are not in those encampments on campuses right now. Has this woman ever heard of self-preservation, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, minding one's own business until forced not to, even perhaps? See, some folks don't have the privilege to worry or care or do anything about what's happening in the Middle East right now. Want to know what they're focused on and worried about? Making ends meet, putting food on the table, how they're going to support themselves and their families. They have real and more pressing issues in front of them than what's happening in the Middle East. Most people just understand that there's nothing they can do about it. No amount of screeching and camping out on college campuses is going to change anything. Boycotting McDonald's because it's trendy to do so on TikTok isn't going to change anything. Not everybody is out here to virtue signal and prove how morally righteous they are about a conflict they know nothing about. You're only worried about it because you have the privilege to not be worried about anything else. I bet if somebody chopped her arm off, she'd be more worried about her own well-being than anything going on in the Middle East, right? So does that make her a brainwashed capitalist drone because she prioritized something more pressing to her than a conflict taking place thousands of miles away? Let's not demonize people who are in situations we may not know or understand. Not everybody has the privilege to just have no problems to worry about and instead worry about everybody else's. And she's so far gone in this regard that the only way she can rationalize the fact that you could disagree with her perspective is that you must be disconnected from your own body to some extent. It's very dehumanizing. So these women clearly had a lot to say, just yapping about this, that, and the third, a whole lot of virtue signaling going on. So let's see, with all this time they spend researching all these things they're talking about so confidently, if they've arrived at any solutions, any valid practical solutions.
This is political versus economic systems, and if we want to change an economic system, then we will have the imagination to form a political system that's actually about community and supporting the planet.
Oh, so their solution is imagination. I mean, when you cut through all of the babble and fluff, their solution ultimately is just imagination. Yeah. This is the mind of a child in the body of an adult.